Hi, Toronto. This week we opened our office in Toronto, so we are a local company now. So POA Network is a sidechain to Ethereum. We can talk a lot about sidechains, but basic idea about sidechains is that they can solve problems of scalability of Ethereum's ecosystem in the form of creating parallel chains. And when you create a new parallel chain, there are some problems you need to solve. So first of all, why your chain is better, some tweaks in consensus and settings, maybe block time, maybe number of validators, maybe different consensus, and so forth, right? So POA setting is POA consensus with independent validators. It's live from December 2017. Still good that this network is alive. Many people think that it's a very, very new idea. But to solve the problem of scalability and horizontal scalability, we need to have, first of all, we need to have same toolings that we have for Ethereum ecosystem. And for example, it's hard to get blockchain explorer experience for sidechains, so that's why we decided to build open source blockchain explorer with the same feature set as the users can. And we're proud to be one of the first projects funded by ECF. And second big problem for sidechain is how to move assets from network to network. So that's why we decided to build a POA bridge. Why, what is interoperability and why do we need bridges between two networks? We need to move assets from network to network because otherwise EF developers and users need to recreate ETH tokens that they have already on mainnet on another network, and it brings lots of problems. So this type of software should be safe, secure, traceable, so you can understand when you move token from network to network, how it's done. And it should be easy to use. Well, in best case scenario, one click, and you move assets from network to network. So that's why we built this software, which is consists of multiple repositories and embed some previous work of other companies. So this we built this bridge for our specific use case. Many companies promise to make interoperability between networks for any type of assets. We understand that it's possible to move any token to any token from network to network, but complexity which we will have building this type of relay chain is very high. So we decided to build bridge for one specific use case: how to move native token of POA network from POA network to ERC20 representation on Ethereum network. Usually new chains move in a positive direction. They start as an ERC20 token, and after they move from Ethereum network to their own chain. Why it's important for sidechain like POA and for new sidechains, right? If you ever think about starting your blockchain in your new sidechain, you will get big problems connecting this native token to exchanges. Exchanges don't like sidechains, new blockchains, etc. If you bring ERC20 token in one hand and blockchain in another hand, they're more likely they will take ERC20 token. So it affects listing time, number of exchanges, price to be listed, and overall project performance. Second problem is access to liquidity. For let's say if you build sidechain and you want to achieve some new features, market will react to this and determine price of your coin. But most likely, price of your token, price of your native coin will be much less than, market cap will be much less than top, let's say, 5 cryptocurrencies. It's very hard to get into, this top cryptocurrencies, right? But moving tokens of sidechain from sidechain to mainnet, we can get access to markets and to liquidity, to decentralized exchanges, centralized exchanges, liquidity providers like Bancor and so forth. So why else? I think that I remember, I'm too young to remember like how internet started, but I remember how internet started in Russia, because I originated from Russia in 1996. You know, I remember these links between providers and how it started and how many links we had before Russia and other countries and so forth. And now it's completely different situation. And first, when internet started, it started with small links for specific use cases, and the same from our perspective should be for connecting blockchains. You take specific use case which have some sense for some people, and you bring this use case to those people. So I will showcase how the bridge is working if internet connection will allow. So basically, we lock tokens on one network, on POA network, we lock and unlock POA tokens in a smart contract. And on Ethereum network, we mint and burn ERC20 representation of this token. There are lots of magic behind the scenes, but basically the technology is very easy to understand for this specific use case. So validators between two blockchains, there is a set of validators. We reuse the same set of subset of validators of POA network. At the moment, there's 16 individuals, US public notaries. We use public notaries as validators on POA network. They protect 150 millions of public value. So the subset of those validators will protect some instances of this bridge. So the duties of this validator is just to provide 100% uptime of the bridge and relay transactions from network to network. So there is a threshold signature achieved by this set of validators, and, but it's behind the scenes, and to use the bridge, we don't need to. Yeah, we don't need to do this to understand how bridge is working. So that's we plan to launch bridge in production on May 10th. So for end user, bridge itself will be a D app with one button, transfer tokens from network to network. So now I'm connected to common test network. I will connect to testnet of POA network. I have some balance, like almost 2 million test POA tokens. And let's imagine this test network is a main network of POA. And what is the price of POA? For one token, it's something like this. Let's calculate how many tokens we need to transfer $1 million. So it's this amount of tokens. So let's put it here. And transfer this amount from tokens from POA network to Cohen network. So we sign a transaction. Luckily, we have this balance. Now, smart contracts on Circle side emitted an event, and a group of validators for testnet we use 2 of 3. So there are 3 active validators, and those 3 validators need to sign at least 2 transactions to Cohen network. And after they sign this transaction and send it to smart contract Cohen network, this POA20 tokens will be minted. Now I don't have, oh, now I have them, right? So there was a moment where I didn't have $1 million and I didn't have ERC20 token representation. But now you can see that I have POA20 token on Cohen testnet, right? So I don't have this POA native tokens on POA network, but I have ERC20 representation on another network. So the same way we will put this bridge in production on May 10th, and we will transfer $1 million back and forth, and we'll put $1 million to Pen Relay, and this ERC20 token will be available on Pen Relay starting from I hope May 10th, right? So this bridge based on first we started as we worked a parity bridge after we replaced almost all smart contracts, and big thanks to Parity for creating new software. And smart contracts of bridge, we did 4 security audits for them, and now doing security audit for our first implementation of the bridge. I also will get a legal review for this bridge, because it's important to understand that the bridge itself is a form of transferring tokens from network to network. If you think about this, is it exchange or not? It can be recognized by regulators as a money transmitting or something like this. So that's why we try to figure out how to make it not money transmitting, but moving your own tokens from network to network. Let's say if another bridging solution will allow to send tokens from LS to POP from network to network. It's very likely will be money transmitting because it's sending from one account to another account. So the legit way to send tokens is to send from your account to your account. So in this situation, as you've seen, I sent from my account and I received on my account on another network. So that's basically you can see this tokens emitted on as a ERC20 tokens on Common testnet, and I can connect it to MetaMask and after send it to, let's say, exchanges and so forth, right? So this POA20 token will be connected to some centralized and decentralized exchanges on the Ethereum side, and we'll get access to markets and liquidity. And POA token will stay on POA network and will be used for smart contract execution and working with smart contracts. So we like this idea very much, and would like to hear your questions or concerns, or if you have any doubts about it, you might have.
No, I mean, it's a good idea.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
I haven't looked into the details. I'm just wondering if you can shortly describe how you're achieving like a trustless transformation, because you can be trusted on one chain, you can be trusted on another chain, but like moving from one to another.
Yeah, when I think about this, it's like, you have 2 cars, right, moving on the same highway, and you have a small connection between them, and you want to, move from one car to another, right? Depending what your connection is, it can be a very tricky situation, or it can be, something obvious. But right now it's tricky, right? We don't know how to achieve this, so that's why we're trying to, we're thinking about attack vectors on these smart contracts on both sides. So the system of bridge is not decentralized for one bridge, but if you imagine hundreds and thousands of bridges operated by different companies, individuals in different countries, it's much harder to deal something with them than, let's say, with centralized exchanges, right? So this bridging is more decentralized when we have more bridges, right? So this is one perspective. So second, if you think about one bridge, right? Like, okay, for POA network, is it this bridge? Is it like security concern for the network? Yes, it is, right? Are we trying to achieve some level of decentralization? Yes, we're trying. So we have 3 validators, like independent individuals, and they're already validators on POA network, right? So we have something called identity at stake, so they're staking their reputation, they're in the same jurisdiction, so they already stake their reputation. So what does staking of reputation means, right? If you open market cap of POA network, then take this market cap and divide it by pounds here. So it's a responsibility of each individual validator to token holders. Right now it's about $9 million. I don't know assets and income of our validators, but most likely it will, if they fail, most likely it will bankrupt their households, right, if they fail their responsibility. So that's the subset of validators independent from each other, but they're not relatives, they're not in the same business, will host independent nodes of this bridge. We start with 3 nodes, but we can increase number of nodes later. So there is a role on both sides of the network which can do something with smart contracts, right? So they can, if you think about bridges and real key scenarios, you understand that you need to set some limits, quotas, and so forth, right? So making these quotas allows some good things and bad things. Good thing is, let's say, if regulators will think that this bridge should be money transmitting business, we understand how to shut down operation of this exact bridge and update it with new type of bridge, which will be more resistant to censorship. So this is one thing, right? So and also there are 3 different roles to modify different types of behavior of bridge on each side. So when we start this bridge, it is operated by 6 multi-sig contracts. And we will distribute these multi-sig contracts to different parties. So it's a good question how to, who will be signers of the bridge, and we're thinking here. But now, good thing that we can split these roles right now, and after decide, give this to someone, like we did with a decentralization approach for PO network when we started it. So it started as a centralized permission network, and after keys were distributed to validators, validators replaced their keys, and network became decentralized because we don't have ability to start new validators, so they can add new validators themselves. Sorry for the long answer. Any other questions? Oh. You first.
So, how do users know which account ID is on the network? Are the 2 account IDs the same, or are they different?
Yeah, so when you send POA token to a smart contract of the bridge emits an event, right? And it puts your wallet address and the amount you send into this event. It's a log, right? So validators create a transaction with your wallet, and they mint token for your wallet on the other side of the bridge. So that's embedded in the protocol. So you can send from different account, but you get tokens on different accounts. Yeah, last question. Oh, last question. Okay.
So I like the idea of this bridge between different blockchains. And so what is the difference between POA bridge and such as something like ARK smart bridge? What is the difference? Like, many different types.
Yeah. ARK, they have a relay chain, so you have to use ARK token, and you kind of follow their roadmap. So with POA bridge, we want to show an example. We put this bridge in production. We put our reputation, funds, responsibilities. It's an operational bridge there. If you look into our GitHub, you can see some operational tool for this bridge, like monitoring, like deployment scripts, and then, it's all tested, security audits for one specific use case. But later you'll think, oh, I want to make bridge ERC20 to ERC20 to move my ERC20 from Ethereum to POA, like part of it, just for fast computation of the other chain. And you can do it, and you're not related to POA network, and you can do this on your own. So that's a difference. You don't need to use a relay chain. So relay chains are good in some sense, but also you should follow their roadmap and their economic model. Here you can create your economic model. So let's say in our use case, our bridge is sponsored by POA network. So for us, it's we don't charge users to send funds from network to network. We figure out how to protect this bridge from DOS attacks by setting different quotas on different sides of the bridge. So it will be hard for malicious attacker to send funds back and forth. Yeah, you want to say that my time is over? Yeah, thank you guys.
So hi, I'm John Pacific. I'm a cryptographic engineer at NewCipher. Let's go through this. Unfortunately, I'm not going to go over really briefly what the KMS is, but essentially all you have to understand is in comparison to something like Amazon Web Services that has a KMS, or Google Cloud KMS where you can upload secrets and decrypt them as needed. Essentially what NewCipher is a decentralized version of this. It's distributed, it's trustless, and it allows people to upload encrypted keys to a network and decrypt data as needed through an access controller. So specifically, I'm going to be talking on exactly how we make this happen. And we use something called proxy re-encryption, which is a form of asymmetric cryptography. I'm sure everybody here is already familiar with public key encryption, as it is already. Essentially, you have Alice and Bob, and both have a private and public key. When Alice wants to encrypt something for Bob, Alice encrypts the data with Bob's public key, and Bob can decrypt that data with his private key. So what proxy re-encryption allows us to do, it allows us to essentially create a third party, or a proxy in our KMS terms. We call this person Ursula. And essentially, we create a re-encryption key, which is a component of both Alice and Bob's keys. This proxy receives this re-encryption key, and Alice can encrypt data for herself. And then when this proxy receives this encrypted data, she can re-encrypt it for Bob, or for anyone who has this re-encryption key generated for them. So essentially, this is how it sort of works here. We have Alice, who generates a proxy re-encryption key from Alice to Bob, and uploads it to a proxy, who then can perform re-encryption, passing it along to Bob, so he can decrypt it with his own private key. This allows for end-to-end encryption in a more scalable format. So, for example, a centralized KMS is essentially what I just described to everybody. Alice and Bob will pretty much share their secret keys together, their private keys together, and upload this re-encryption key to a proxy who can then handle access control and things like that. You'll mostly find similar structures in government settings where revealing a private key maybe isn't such a bad thing. But obviously, for a blockchain technology, we can't have this. We have to make everything trustless. So this is, again, what it looks like for the centralized version of it. Essentially, Alice will encrypt data, and then Bob can request access to it, which when Alice generates a re-encryption key, uploads it to the proxy re-encrypts the data, Bob can now access the data. So for decentralized key management, we had to come up with something new for this. We worked with a cryptographer at the University of Malaga. His name is David Nunes. We've been working with him for quite some time now, and we devised a scheme that is based off of something called BBS98, which is an original proxy re-encryption scheme. We call this scheme Umbrel. Essentially, what Umbrel allows us to do is use a form of threshold cryptography, which allows us to generate these re-encryption keys and split them of M of n, where M is the threshold minimum. So you need an M number of re-encryptions out of N re-encryption keys that were distributed to actually successfully re-encrypt this data. So if you don't have M re-encryption keys, then you can never have the full, complete re-encryption key. This is like very similar to what I'm sure many of you see with Shamir secret sharing or threshold signatures, for example. And in fact, we use essentially what is Shamir secret sharing to do this threshold cryptography. Skipping over some of the token stuff. Some major use cases in our ecosystem right now are with, for example, decentralized databases for access control. How do you allow a person access to some data? Well, you can do this with proxy re-encryption, where you can encrypt the data and only allow access to it when needed. Another big one is medical data sharing, where in the current ecosystem of things, essentially Alice, which is the data owner, so say your biometric data, your medical records, you have to trust a doctor with that data. With proxy re-encryption, this would actually put the power into Alice's hands to share that as wanted. So for example, say you move across the country and you want to find a new doctor, well, this allows you to have the ability to share that data with that new doctor as wanted or needed. And you can revoke that data whenever you'd like as well. So this is essentially like the primary power of proxy encryption, is not only this access control, but also this ability to revoke as well. So in the case where Alice maybe doesn't like the doctor she finds out is a little shady and she doesn't like him, she can revoke the data and they'll revoke the re-encryption key, and no, the doctor does not have access anymore. So just to go over this a bit more, I'm going to talk a bit more technical about what proxy re-encryption is and how we use it. So in our scheme, we use a KEM-DEM approach, which is simply key encapsulation mechanism, data encapsulation mechanism, where key encapsulation is the Umbrel scheme itself, and data encapsulation is the symmetric cipher that you're all very familiar with, AES-256 or CHA-CHA-20. And specifically for Umbrel, we actually have a security definition for it, which is IND-PRE-CCA secure, which was defined in the paper by Catalini and Susan Honenberger. And so essentially it's chosen ciphertext attack secure. We also do verification that re-encryption has correctly been done through zero-knowledge proofs. So I have a demo that I'm going to try to get through. I'm not sure we have quite enough time, but I'll try for it, and I'll try to annotate if possible. So essentially,
a cryptographic engineer at Decipher. Today I'm going to be showing IONO, which is our split key proxy, our split key threshold proxy re-encryption library for Python. So let's just jump right into it. Here's how you import Umbrel. So we're importing several things. PRE, which is Umbrel itself. Keys, which are for Umbrel keys, such as a public key and a private key. And a configuration setting system. We use a default curve, SEC-P256K1, which is the same curve known that Bitcoin uses. And we like this because the entire ecosystem uses it. So you can set this default curve by just calling config.set default curve. If you don't set this, a warning will come up saying that it's using it by default. This is actually going to error because I've already set it, and not because I'm running Python. So we're going to be generating keys for Alice and Bob next. This is just two key pairs, a private key and a public key for both Alice and Bob. We can do this by calling the Umbrel private key class here, calling it a key. We can get a public key by deriving it from the private key by calling get pub key. We do this for both Alice and Bob. So let's just demonstrate some standard PKE, which is public key encryption. We'll have a plain text which says proxy re-encryption is cool. And we can call this by simply doing PRE.encrypt. We use Alice's public key and her plain text. And the output of this is an Umbrel capsule and a ciphertext. The Umbrel capsule is the output of Umbrel itself. So this is what we'll get re-encrypted. This is using a key encapsulation mechanism, which is typically asymmetric cryptography. The ciphertext here is the output of a data encapsulation mechanism, which is typically a symmetric algorithm, such as AES-256 or CHA-CHA-20 called 1305, which is what Umbrel uses. So I can print out this ciphertext here. We get it, such this, and it is encrypted. So next we're going to decrypt it. This is done very simply by passing in Umbrel capsule, which you can think of as essentially an encrypted key through Umbrel. And we pass in Alice's private key, the ciphertext, and a pub key that Alice uses essentially to sort of verify a signature. You can see it is encrypted. So next we're going to demonstrate how NewCipher KMS uses this. Bob, when he wants access to some data,
I'm going to go ahead and skip that.
a split re-encryption key.
Essentially here we're generating a split re-encryption key. So this is where we declare the MMN 10 and 20. So essentially we're saying we need 10 re-encryptions to actually recover the entire data. We generate 20. This is what we distribute across the network.
So very similar to Shamir's secret sharing. So she uses her private key and Bob's public key to do this. What she's doing here is generating 20 shares where 10 are needed to reconstruct the original key. And what's going to happen is she's going to take these 20 different shares and distribute them to 20 different nodes. So Bob only has to contact 10 nodes for re-encryption so that he can actually have access to the data. So kfrags here is a list of 20 different keys. Show this by doing line kfrags. So in the next component, I'm simulating Bob going to each node and getting his capsule re-encrypted. So to show this, I'm picking 10 random shares outside of this list of K frags. Just to show you that it doesn't matter which 10 frags you pick, you only need 10 unique frags to re-encrypt this data. And so now what Ursula is going to do on her own node on the new cipher network is called PRE.ReEncrypt, using her K frag and Bob's capsule that he passes to her. This gives an output of a C frag, which is essentially a ciphertext fragment, and she gives that back to Bob. Bob attaches this to his capsule, which essentially when he re-encrypts the minimum number, which is 10, he'll attach all 10, which grants him access to this data. A little bit more information on these K frags is that each K frag is what we consider perfectly secret and has no information by itself at all, unless that minimum is reached. So even if nodes try to collude, they have to collude with minimum numbers to do this. This is actually really hard. So it distributes trust on the network and makes it very hard for these nodes to collude. And even if they did successfully collude, the only thing you can really do with a re-encryption key is re-encrypt data from Alice to Bob. So it requires a very nuanced attack, but it's not really it's not easy to perform. So now Bob has been granted access, which we can now demonstrate encryption by simply decrypting it like he did before. So now that the fragments, the ciphertext fragments have been...
So essentially what I did in that previous snippet of code was actually re-encrypt data that was originally encrypted for Alice. It was actually re-encrypted for Bob. This never revealed the private key to anyone, and it just simply transformed the ciphertext to be decryptable by another person through this re-encryption key. This actually works here. I'll skip ahead and show the output there. But I'm short on time, sorry. So if you have any further questions, please come talk to me afterwards, and I can show you guys a live demo if you want to just stand around my laptop and everything. Thank you so much.
My name is Natalia Amelin, and I represent an organization called CryptoChicks. Some of you maybe already know us, but in case you don't, I'm just going to tell you guys quickly about our story, why we came to existence, and what we're trying to accomplish. So first observation today is I'm looking around and I'm very impressed. I see so many female faces here, which is incredible. Or maybe it's just all the guys are partying outside and girls are here to learn. So, but I can tell you that you probably go to many events just like I do, and one thing we notice is that traditionally the female participation in the space is different statistics have different figures, but let's say 10%. And our goal as an organization is to change that. So some of you maybe think, why bother? I think there are multiple reasons why we should, but I think for the selfish reasons, we should bother because we want our products to be, friendly for all the users, and we want them to be created having the all users in mind, right? Otherwise, we're just going to end up with a bunch of techie guys programming products for the techie friends, right? So I believe that female. Oh, you guys hear me okay? Yeah. All right, great, sorry. So we believe that females will bring this different, unique perspective, which will help to make our products more usable and more adoptable for the future. Second reason is today, if you look at the labor force, approximately 47% of the labor force is combined by women. So what it means, as the blockchain industry, and we're all here, I think, for the reason that we believe in it, will create the major disruptions. And the statistics show that the jobs that will be most impacted by these disruptions will be, over any automation, will be the jobs which are currently held by females. So for that reason, we selfishly should care. So how are we trying to address it? First of all, there are women in blockchain. So when I look around, I see many faces today. Other events you go, there are female faces. But when it comes to different events and conferences and speaking opportunities, females are traditionally shied away. I was looking at the speech list for the EdCon, which starts tomorrow, and you have to go and scroll and scroll and scroll before you see any friendly female face there, right? And I think it's not for the lack of female talent in the industry. It's just somehow we prefer to just, maybe stay at home and do our work. I think what we need to do is we need to give more visibility to females and for those who are already in the field, and create opportunities and engage more female, whether they are in technology or not, so that they join the forces with us in this industry. So the way we are trying to approach this is like that. We recently had a conference and a hackathon, which ran in Toronto in the beginning of April over 3 days. The hackathon was a purpose we organized to be female only, because we wanted to provide education for women and thus, increase the penetration of women in the field. So during that weekend and 3 months leading up to the hackathon, we spent enormous time educating women. One of our sponsors, Bloggeeks, provided the free education for women, and our other sponsors ran the webinars for over the 3 months leading up to the event, providing different tools and teaching women on the different platforms. So when the hackathon came together, we have 28 projects. Some of them are with a very high potential. We have some investors who are already interested in these projects. And that just tells us that, the model works. So we educate women, we show them the opportunities, we show them to the potential investors and to the companies who are already in the space, and we get more female engagement as a result. Also, we think that it's very important for us to keep on track and making sure that we educating the younger generation as well. So one of the girls at our hackathon, she was 16-year-old. She actually ended up to be a winner. She got 100% vote of judges. She'll be speaking at EdCon as well, so come for sure and listen. This girl is amazing. She is just, out of a different world, I think. Her project, her ideas, and the stuff that she talks about is just incredible. So we need to get these women, again, opportunities to connect them with the right people so that they can keep working and developing their projects and growing as the leaders in the community. So now, what is it that I'm going to ask of you? So first of all, we have upcoming event this time in New York. I know that some of you may be from there, but some of you mostly probably in Toronto. However, if any of you is interested as a woman in participating in the hackathon in New York, please check out our website. It's right up there, cryptochickshackathon.com, and come and participate in the event. It's going to be great and exciting. Secondly, if you are interested in supporting us for the event, please also go to our website and check out the sponsorship opportunities. So the next is, do you have a couple of minutes still? 1 minute. Okay, need to wrap up. So as a result of the hackathon, we actually started creating the incubator for growing female projects. So the plan is the top projects from the hackathons will get a chance to work as part of the incubator to develop further. So what do we need for the incubator? We're looking for anyone who can mentor. So if you are interested to share your skills and you have a passion for teaching, please join as a mentor. That will be fantastic. And again, if you're a company interested in supporting women in the field, please contact me personally and we can discuss how we can get involved. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Chris Padavano. I'm an attorney who works at MakerDAO. MakerDAO is a permissionless credit system that relies on principles of over-collateralization to create the DAI stablecoin, which is a decentralized stablecoin that exists on Ethereum. DAI has been live since December 17th, 2017. It's currently in beta. You can use it right now. I would encourage all of you to check out the DAI dashboard at dai.makerdao.com. And we will be launching our multi-collateral DAI in the middle of Q2 this year, which will allow several different types of collateral to be accepted into the permissionless credit system of Maker.
Hello, I'm Alexandra from Golem project, and Golem is basically creating a market for computing power, unused computer power, so you can share your unused computer power to get GMT tokens. And right now we support one use case, which is Blender rendering, and we launched the mainnet 3 weeks ago.
Cool. I'm Nabil. I'm from Status. Status is basically a mobile application, which is your mobile window to Ethereum. So we have decentralized chat, we have a wallet, as well as a DApp browser. And we are approximately 2 to 6 weeks away from mainnet launch. So we are currently going through our security audit at the moment.
Pass it back. Okay, so my next question is, what is your next big step, and then what is kind of the biggest challenge that you perceive to getting there? When do you actually start Handle, since you guys are so close to your next big milestone here?
So we're thinking about being on mainnet not as some grandiose event where all of a sudden we're going to have 1 million users. We're taking it very gradually, so we're starting off like our nightlies from a week ago, our nightly builds of the application, have mainnet as an opt-in. And then once we think that it works and it's stable, we'll release that to our end users, to the public, so that we can, so they can select mainnet, test it, and there'll be a giant warning sign saying, hey, you're on mainnet, this is real money, and we're not 100% sure this is going to work, so don't put $1 million in here. So there's going to be lots and lots of warning signs that will happen throughout the process, so people can test it, and then as we get data coming through, and we can ensure stability, ensure scalability, and we have spent the past month or so building out analysis to determine exactly what percentage of messages are coming through, and basically making sure that the user experience is stable while everything's on mainnet. So we're being very cautious in how we're doing it, especially considering our app is focused on end consumers rather than developers. Maybe you can talk about, like, you guys have already launched on mainnet.
Yeah, so maybe
Okay.
you can go first.
So the biggest upcoming release for MakerDAO will be multi-collateral DAI. So currently, right now, the permissionless credit system of Maker only accepts one type of collateral, and that's Ether. And for several reasons, this is probably not the best long-term strategy to ensure the stability of DAI. So we are actively trying to build out our infrastructure so that any type of ERC20 token can be used as collateral in Maker's ecosystem. And this is really important because ultimately we would like a very diverse pool of non-correlated assets. So right now, Bitcoin goes up, the rest of the market usually goes up, Ethereum included, and everything in cryptocurrency seems to be very correlated. However, you can start imagining a world where you could tokenize real-world assets in an ERC20, token, and then putting them on-chain. And we would very much like to have those types of collateral sitting in our collateral pool over the next several years.
Okay, so like the next steps for getting to mainnet. It's not the right question for me, but like, what are the next steps after launching to mainnet? Well, for sure we have to be quite careful with updating the software right now. Like, we must be much more. We cannot allow ourselves to introduce new features as quickly as we were able to do on testnet, because as you mentioned, right now we're handling real money, so each feature must be fully tested. And additionally, during this mainnet batch, our network has scaled rapidly. So we can observe which part of the system must be optimized further to allow further scaling.
How would you say that your relationship to your token holders changes from ICO to your initial roadmap to the various stages of the process to, in your case, the actual mainnet launch? How does that community relationship change as you move on the road?
Okay, so with scaling up, also we got tons of questions from new users that wanted to run Golem app. There were the holders of Golem, but also new user that wants to earn some new GNT. And yeah, we have to plan support shifts, answer all the technical questions. But then magical things happen and users started to help each other, and that was amazing. Like when they have an issue before and this new issue appear again, the user that previously had the problem was able to teach new users how to fix it. And that's quite good. And we've got a lot of support from the community, information about problems, issues on GitHub.
Talk louder. It is talk louder.
Talk louder.
Oh, okay, thank you. So,
You gotta put it a little lower, maybe.
lower.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Okay. Yeah, so we've got a lot of support and words of encouragement, but also information about bugs, problems, and requested for the new features.
So I would like to hear from you two also though, as you're moving along, approaching milestones on your roadmap toward having sort of your fully fledged product, how your token holders, community stakeholders sort of, do they stay with you? What are sort of the ebb and flow, the emotional reality of all of that between you and your community?
So something to keep in mind about MakerDAO is that we've never had a big general solicitation kind of ICO. MKR, which is the governance token in MakerDAO's ecosystem, has been kind of slowly dripped out to core community members, core developers who have helped build out the suite of smart contracts that powers MakerDAO. After the launch of DAI on the mainnet in December, there was definitely a lot of interest and influx into our community. It's still pretty tightly knit. I think there are some, I guess Maker confuses a lot of people on first impression, but after spending some time talking to some of our engineers and some of our community support folks, they really get the whole picture and really buy into our vision. I would imagine that as we grow, that it'll get harder and harder to kind of establish rapport with new community members who come in, but so far so good.
Because we're also end consumer facing, we are super open with everything that we do to our community. We have actually one of our rock star, evangelists here, Andy here, sitting in the corner. Shout out! They do an amazing job. So we have our own kind of chat using Riot, super active, and we have people in the community that who are not, who are just part of the community who are answering other people. So we've really built this cohesive network. We also, in terms of people coming to us saying, "Where's your roadmap? When are you going to launch on mainnet?" Every 2 weeks we hold a town hall, and those town halls are public. They're on live streamed on YouTube, and then people in the community link to them anyone else who comes in is like, when do you go on mainnet? Someone will rock up and be like, watch this video at minute 43, and you can see when it's going to be on mainnet. So we, through the transparency and through making sure everything, our entire communication is open, and also engaging with certain community members that are super passionate, we then enable them to engage with the rest. And so far it's working pretty well. We don't have like a giant community of thousands of people, but we have, I would say in the hundreds. And then there's also the language issues, which we haven't quite solved yet. So we had an AMA on Friday about our new incubate program, and all the questions were in Korean, and then we didn't know how to deal with that. So that's an issue that we haven't solved yet. But
So what about the dynamics within your team? Because all of these things start with some crazy idea, right? And sort of imagining what you could do. And then at a certain point, it starts to become more and more real. And like you said, Alexandra, you can't just experiment anymore because it's actually out there, it's being used, the decisions that you're making have real and immediate consequences. So how does the dynamic of your team change as you have to sort of take into account these new realities?
So scaling is always hard, right? Like it's even harder, I think, for an organization like MakerDAO, which is a true distributed autonomous organization, right? There are several different arm's length parties who all collaborate in a very unique and interesting way to build Maker. So internally, I think you said it best before, just like being transparent and open with both your community and your team is kind of one of the best ways, I think, to just coordinate better and work together better. I also think that MakerDAO has an ambitious vision, and there are so many folks who work with us, not because we're writing checks, just because it's something that they're deeply passionate about, and I'm sure it's the same with most other projects building on Ethereum. So I think open communication and coordination is just super important.
Okay, so in Golem case, we have to remember that the first version of Brass that supports Rust rendering is only the first step toward a great vision that we have in mind. And right now, we can focus on developing this more generalized, more multi-purpose app that we always plan to do. And like a big part of the team can concentrate right now on planning and redesigning the protocol and creating task API that will allow developers to add their own task, not only rendering task. And only a smaller part of the team and for the part-time can focus on bug fixing and improving UX for the Brass app. So it's like huge changes in the Golem team right now. We are organizing.
I forgot the question. Was it?
How does the dynamic of your team change as you go from like more theoretical to more like hard reality?
So I think as the mindset shifts that like people are going to use real money and there's real communication that's going to happen on these channels, we need to take a lot of the core principles that Status has a lot more seriously, or like this is the realities people are going to use this for these tools. So for example, our communication is built up of a whisper, and so we need to make sure that the communication that happens is actually completely secure and decentralized and fulfills the promise that Status set out to achieve. There's Telegram being shut down in Iran and all these situations with data leaks and the Cloud Act and all these things are coming in and people are looking at Status saying, oh, you guys are going to solve this. And so now the team needs to take that very seriously. So there's that, there's the fact that you're using, because it's a wallet, you've got real money involved, you're on a mobile app, so there's a lot of security audit process that we need to now integrate. So development will take longer, but yeah, it's kind of the reality sinking in that we need to take these principles very seriously. It's not theoretical. We need to build everything that we've thought of that has been invested in status actually into the product.
So I kind of want to do a follow-up question here, which is like, you don't all have to answer this, but do you think that for yourselves or for anyone else that it gets less interesting as it becomes more real?
No.
I mean, I would hope not, but I wonder if it, like, if any of the developers working on these things are sort of like more interested in the ideas, and then the reality comes along, and maybe like, is there any sort of turnover on your team to people who are more, I don't know, sort of business-minded, or I'm just making stuff up, but I'm curious.
We have we have a slightly different, we have a separate problem, which is we're growing so fast, so we're nearly 75 people, and so our problem is to actually instill those principles, and then that actually helps a lot. But yeah, so we don't have a problem of people getting bored of actually doing the work. It's the opposite.
I don't think people get bored changing the world, right? You
Yeah.
know, like, Signal today,
Oh yeah, exactly.
like, there was, I guess Signal put out a release today, talking about a strategy that they were using in order for their app to be used in Iran and several other jurisdictions.
Arab countries.
Yeah, 100%. So I think if people aren't buying, what's the point if people aren't trying to kind of make things better
and when you have so many people coming new into this space, it's like the concept of decentralization. If you're not in the blockchain, if you haven't drunk all the Kool-Aid yet, it's very foreign, especially in Western markets where I grew up in Australia. Decentralization is awesome, but it doesn't I trust the bank and I have nothing to hide. Whereas for 6+ billion people in the world, it's a very different story. So seeing it in action and being look, this is stuff that's happening every day, that's impacting people's lives, and you're responsible for fixing this. That's very empowering.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting question, because in this space it's quite easy to get stuck in a constant research and trying to create abstract protocols that can be only used when Ethereum is extremely scalable, extremely cheap solution, so you can run multi-steps, contracts, computation to do simple payments. But if we want to create something that can be used right now in the current situation and the current state of the ecosystem, we sometimes must drop off interesting and wonderful ideas and just deal with some simplification that can be used right now.
So we just have a couple of minutes left. I want to end on this one, because you just sort of brought this up for me. Is there one thing, one milestone, or one sort of core concept that just turned out to be unrealistic in the world that we actually live in right now?
I need to think about that first.
Go ahead. You're just the closest, so you get the mic first.
I'm not sure how this will turn out, but this concept of freedom of speech and self-sovereignty of information, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for status. And there's a lot of projections about if status gets big enough and governments start saying, well, we need access, we need your keys, and there's no status servers. How does this, what happens next? You get blocked from the App Store, and then you release the SDK, and people sideload. How is this going to play out in the next 12 to 36 months? So I don't know.
So I guess it's important to realize, I guess you guys are dealing with the same problem, right? It's just MakerDAO is a permissionless system. So it's a smart contract, right? Our CDPs, collateralized depositions, the escrow and lending contract is permissionless. You just have to call it, right? And it will answer. We put a UI in front of it, but there's nothing stopping someone from just interacting directly with this tool. And I think that one of the great things about blockchains like Ethereum is that they provide these tools that really anyone can use anywhere in the world. And that's both a little scary because there's a lot at stake in doing these types of things, both for freedom of speech and the free movement of capital throughout the world. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting couple of years dealing with nation state type actors. In like 2013, 2014, I think people were like, oh, the U.S. government's going to come in and shut down Bitcoin. And now I guess 2018, like maybe they try, right? So that's just my take.
Alexandra, did you want to add anything? Unforeseen challenges? Nothing comes to mind. That's okay. I think we're out of time anyway, right? So I don't know if I ever actually said this. I have been Althea. I work on ecosystem growth at Amigo and elsewhere. And thank you all for being here, and thank you to our lovely panel.
Well, I guess let's start off tonight. We're going to be talking about scaling blockchains. Very exciting topic, and I guess everyone should introduce themselves. We've got a lot of people from different projects. I'm Carl.Tech. I'm an Ethereum researcher. At the Ethereum Foundation. Stuff.
Hello everyone, I'm Xiaowei Wang, and from Ethereum Foundation too. Oh, sorry. And I'm working on the sharding implementation.
Hey, I'm David Knott. I'm a plasma researcher for Misa Go. Hi.
Hello, I'm Peter from the Web3 Foundation.
Hi, I'm Jay, and I work on Cosmos and Tendermint.
Going to do a lot of mic passing tonight. So let's start off with what is, how can we, anyone want to kind of outline the different scalability solutions? What is the scaling problem? What are we actually trying to address tonight? Anyone want to pick that up?
Oh, I was pointing at Xiaowei, but okay, yeah.
Cool. The Bitcoin blockchain has been around for a little while now, but it's only been fairly recently that kind of the greater world and kind of large masses of people have started to appreciate blockchains and see their usefulness. Unfortunately, the majority of these blockchains were not necessarily ready for kind of the huge influx of demand. And so now many projects are racing to scale up to be able to support the growing demand.
So I think of blockchains as being basically a kind of computer. Just think of it as a computer that's massively replicated and is open to the public or permissionless. And if you think of it as just really a computer in that sense, then scaling makes a lot more sense. Or we have analogies to draw from the past. So, the way to scale typically with servers is to have many parallel servers, so sharding out to many servers. Often they're coordinated by one or more manager computers that dispatch requests to various shards. Shard meaning just another computer that's operating as part of a whole, so that you can divide the problem space so that each computer can solve that independently. And that's how Google and all these websites scale, right? They have a bunch of machines, not one beefy machine, but many machines that operate independently, working on a small subset of the problem space. And I think in the past year, it sounds like a lot of the conversation around scaling is transitioning from vertical scaling, if you remember scaling Bitcoin, that conversation was mostly about SegWit and so on. And then they actually scaled Bitcoin by just forking it. Right? So I think that 2018, maybe we'll have more consensus that this is the way to scale by having many parallel chains that are somehow coordinated. Of course, there are other approaches as well, so maybe we'll talk a bit about that.
Can I add to that?
Mm-hmm.
So I think from as Jay said, there is this computer, and we can run multiple computers. But with blockchain, we have the additional consideration that is usually not such a big problem with physical computers, is that we want a group of people or community of people relying on the outcomes of the computation, and we want them to have certain security guarantees about how the computations are being executed. And there is usually this trade-off as we get to as the bigger the community we have that maintains a particular computer or is able to take care of its security, the more secure it is. But the kind of the smaller the securing community, the worse the security will be. So there is many different approaches out there right now, and you know probably about sharding, which tries to maintain the security of the overall ecosystem. There are some other approaches like sidechains or Cosmos that kind of keep this separated security for each of the different computers, and there is those kind of hybrid solutions like Plasma that try to go in the middle, so to say. So security is the additional.
And I think that I agree with Peter that the trade-off between we want the scalability and also we want the decentralized. So how to decide solution to make both enough good, and it's workable, but it takes time.
Wonderful. I'm going to put in my 2 cents as well, even though I'm moderator. Scaling blockchains these days, we just talked about like a bunch of different solutions, different like sharding and how difficult that can be, and Plasma and all these different kind of like buzzwords and like promises. Oh, we can scale, but like fundamentally what we're trying to do is we're trying to create applications that people can use, that everyone can use, and that are useful for these people. And part of doing this means not waiting 15 seconds for a transaction to confirm. Part of this is making sure that these systems are actually decentralized and secure. And this is not a trivial pursuit. It is quite difficult to maintain this kind of the secret sauce that makes you feel warm inside, that it's a decentralized system and it can be defended. At the same time, making it useful so that people can rely on it for their for the money in their pocket or for contracts or whatever it may be. So this is definitely a kind of hot topic, and maybe a good thing to describe is what is the kind of difference, maybe like a really quick difference between maybe some 3 or I'll say 4 of the scaling solutions, which is just like a sharded blockchain, Plasma, and maybe state channels or something like that, and sidechains. Anyone can take it.
So it's, I guess, the term sharding as a type of scaling solution distinct from the others is, I guess, a term of art that is being created in the blockchain space. So that's interesting. So let's go with that. But wait, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense because it's a similar model. Because when you shard, typically in a web service, like a Web 2.0 service, like Yelp or Google, then it is a shared security system. So I think it's an apt name. I would say that for Cosmos, what we do is we create just the protocols to allow any 2 blockchains to communicate. So that it could be a kind of sharding solution. So like the sidechain could be either sovereign, it could be an independent blockchain that lives on its own and has its own governance and has its own validator set, has its own staking pool. Or it could be something that, so you can have a sovereign chain independently, or you can have many chains that are run by the same validator set, all connected to the same hub. And so the Cosmos Hub, when we launch, it's meant to be permissionless such that it accommodates both sovereign chains as well as a kind of sharded chains as well, through shared validator set.
I guess we didn't hear the difference between the different approaches that much, but so that basically the idea was with sharding is to move to Ethereum where there is not only a single Ethereum chains that takes care of all the transactions, but we have the consensus over a number of shards that are running in parallel. So this is where a lot of the research is being done, and it's a kind of a long-term scaling solution that we are going towards. On a kind of a short-term time scale, there is a number of other solutions that are also complementary to sharding. One is state channels, where you take your smart contract or take your computations that you want to do, and you kind of insure yourself on the main chain, and then you perform interactions with whoever else is using that smart contract. And if there is if anyone user notices that someone else does something bad, then they can kind of reclaim their insurance on the main chain. With Plasma is kind of somewhere in the middle, where you have kind of this separate chain that you can use just as maybe a main Ethereum chain and deploy your application on it. But at the same time, even though if this chain has lower security and its security fails, you still have ability to kind of bring your application back onto the main chain.
Yeah, Plasma is really, I see it as very much kind of a hybrid solution, because it's basically a another blockchain. So you have the root chain, and then you have Plasma chain. But the Plasma chain shares the majority of the security properties of the root chain by basically taking a compact form of its state and then storing that onto the root chain. So when I think of Plasma, I think of kind of two consensus mechanisms, with kind of the root chain consensus mechanism being the final arbiter. And then with sharding, I see kind of a more horizontal form of scaling, where you're basically expanding upon the root chain's consensus mechanism so that it's able to support different block sequences of transactions.
So I think the most difference between sharding and other scaling solutions is that we can do some fundamental protocol change in the Ethereum chain that we are using now. So, and other most layer 2 solutions, we are doing some very fancy stuff on the contract or something. And yeah, sometimes people ask me about like what is Plasma a competing solution to sharding? But I think that doesn't make sense, because that's how we scale the layer 1, and we also scale layer 2. They are helpful to each other.
Xiaowei and me are very good friends, so they're not competing. And yeah, don't worry.
David's the Plasma guy. Xiaowei, lead shard. So, first, before I would like everyone to start thinking about questions, because I want to make sure this is like a nice participatory, just like this is an open blockchain, this is an open ecosystem. Please ask questions, because that's the best. But while you think of questions, I'd like can we scale today? Is there a way to scale right now and not compromise on decentralization, or actually build a dApp that is user friendly and that works well for people? I think we can.
Yeah, we did a pretty interesting workshop recently called Scaling Now for exactly that topic. So there is a lot of cool developments kind of down in the pipeline, but really for developers now there is not many very easily usable solutions, but still you can get going. So for instance, some applications like Funfair, they're doing a casino on the blockchain. They made their own state channels, and it's pretty usable, and they can do it right now, and it works pretty well. So I think state channels is one way. There is not many prepackaged solutions yet, but you can look at some existing implementations of state channels, and especially if it's application specific, you can potentially make it work for your users. Though you need to architect your application around it, so it won't be just the same application that you used otherwise. Another solution that is very much immediate is sidechains. So before Igor was presenting POA network, so it's basically deploying a chain that is running alongside Ethereum and then bridging it to the main Ethereum network and then exchanging tokens or potentially information between the two. And depending on what kind of sidechain you deploy, of course it might have worse security than the Ethereum chain. However, it's a kind of an easy way to test your application and maybe even deploy it and then wait around for other solutions that will enable it to be secure. So, for instance, something like Plasma will be able to come in later and potentially enable security on those sidechains as well. So sidechains, state channels are the main ones, and then other ones are coming down in the pipeline.
I think Jay wants to have it.
Yeah, I just want to say that we recently launched a testnet with, so Cosmos is really, we're starting with a particular proof of stake algorithm based on Tendermint BFT consensus. And on top, you have to build a layer of staking and delegation so that when you delegate your stake to someone, it's actually skin in the game. And also managing like a list of top 100 validators, including delegation voting power, to ensure that we have a good distribution. So this stuff is I would say, what Tendermint was originally designed to do, to create a public proof of stake, massive participation, decentralized blockchain. And the idea with Cosmos is to connect many of these chains together. We just had a testnet. It's running now with the newest iteration of the proof of stake algorithm I talked about. So it's coming really close. We have developers building on the Cosmos SDK. Like there's a group called Lino. They're creating a decentralized YouTube, building on the Cosmos SDK. And we have we're also going to help with work with Amisago to fork. There was an announcement about the spoon of Amisago's exchange, and that'll be built on the Cosmos SDK as well. This is all happening, and we're going to scale within 3 months.
There is lots happening now. In terms of prepackaged solutions, those are on the way, but there are lots of emerging tools that the bold can use to craft their dApps. I would say the tools are definitely getting better in terms of scaling. One of the kind of easy things you can do is really think very hard about what you actually need to store on a blockchain, because a lot of information works just fine in a normal centralized database. And I would say that's a good first step that you can do now.
We can scale in 3 months, but the research has a very great breakthrough these days, and we have a rough roadmap that we can probably able to provide some spatial use case in the very first phase 1 that we only provide the data layer for the shard chains. Any comments?
Yes. So absolutely. Well, just to elaborate, in early sharding, in the sharding roadmap that is coming quite soon and being developed right now with a bunch of different implementations, there will be kind of this availability layer. So you can actually already even in early stages where the sharding protocol for Ethereum is not quite finished, you can already use it for something like Twitter. And I would just like to give my 2 cents before I open it up for questions, I'm sorry. And that is that we absolutely can scale now. And it turns out the biggest reason why we're not able to scale now and the biggest reason why we can't create like these dApps is not any technical limitations. It is simply information that has not been propagated to a broader community. And it needs to be propagated because for this decentralized technology to really stick, we need to take advantage of the moment that we have now where everyone's looking at us and then create something that's really awesome. And it's not going to be the researchers at Ethereum, maybe it'll be at Cosmos and Parity as well, but it's not going to be the kind of researchers. It will be once the design practices are kind of propagated and everyone knows how to create scalable, decentralized applications using things like Plasma, using crypto-economic tools that are not even well defined yet, that's when we'll really scale. And that's when we'll really have a really awesome dApp. So it's really, don't wait for the researchers, like quote unquote researchers. You're a researcher too, come on, we're all the same. It just so happens that we were in the room when we talked about the sharding stuff. It's not that hard. Crypto economics is not that hard. Anyway, so that's my rant.
Where should we go to learn about crypto?
Oh, you should go to 2 places. 1, there's ETH research where you can participate, and 2, cryptoeconomics.study, a crypto economics course for everyone. No, I'm working on a course to help spread these ideas. But anyway, questions? Yes?
Right now, the main platform or the main tool wallet for using the apps is MetaMask, basically, right? Everyone uses it, everyone knows it. But now if we talk about scaling solutions, basically MetaMask may turn out to be the kingmaker, so whatever whatever is supported by it the most will win, regardless of whether it's a technology or not. And now to the question, what are your reflections on that? Do you consider that a real danger, that MetaMask really can be this kingmaker? Do you have any plans to develop another wallet, or I don't know, any thoughts regarding this wallet issue?
Yes, so the wallet issue is definitely something to note, and one thing good, MetaMask is open source, you can fork it, okay, that's great. But number 2, you can actually create MetaMask using stuff like service workers and web workers and local storage, and so you don't actually need an extension necessarily to have an Ethereum wallet that is persistent in your browser. Okay, maybe that's not the greatest solution really long term, but it's good enough for kind of at least a browser experience that is transacting low value. And then things like Cypher browser, things like Toshi, things like a bunch of status. These things are also coming. But yeah. Also more questions.
This may be a little general and broad, but it may not apply to each of you, but I think it's kind of, especially with where the world's going and the priorities of our societies anywhere in the world, but I think I know there's a lot of social impact blockchains and there's a lot of really cool projects coming out of there, but I feel like the conversations are always revolved around fintech and the currencies, but I guess maybe individually or with what you're working on right now, is there anything, I guess, where, what are the priorities of the Ethereum community when it comes to making a difference in a broader sense? We all have our wallets, yes, it's great, we have the money, that's great too, but there are also bigger issues such as climate change, such as people that are not connected to the internet. I know there's a project with Right Mesh that they're doing something really great there in terms of connectivity, but what are the priorities in the Ethereum community to kind of help with that?
This is a global consensus engine which will unite all of humanity and solve so many coordination problems, but here we go.
think something that's in everyone's minds, especially in the Ethereum community, and Cosmos, which is part of, overlaps with the Ethereum community, is just governance. So blockchains that launch in the future, and even the ones that exist today, are all thinking about how to have an effective governance system. And so when the Cosmos Hub launches, for example, the Hub has a governance mechanism that the validators and all the stakeholders need to abide by in order to pass proposals in a specific way. It's not exactly the same as any existing governance system, but it's a very well-defined method for people to come together and coordinate. So if you think about like what BFT, the original Byzantine generals' problem, it was in the context of war and for generals to coordinate an attack. I think we have a lot of problems today that require that kind of coordination, and an effective governance system, I think, can go a long ways for that.
So sorry, to follow up with something like that, when we have governments that aren't really talking much about how this will be very impactful and very helpful to our society and our world, how are we going to combat that? And how are we going to, I guess, make it okay?
I think we have to start from the ground up and go to local politics and start there. So for example, in Berkeley, there's Ben Bartlett, who's running for California Assembly, but he did a great amount of work in Berkeley recently, starting from banning disposable plastic, right? But also he's got a plan for introducing municipal bonds into Berkeley on the blockchain, right? And that's just a start. I think it gets the conversation going and makes it more comfortable for people to feel like, okay, this is something that the government can get involved in. So that's one way to do it. But I really think that simultaneously we also need to consider that sometimes local government, the existing system isn't the best to introduce these ideas. In that case, it's just grassroots movements, right? I think we need a lot more of that everywhere.
Iterative, positive sum games. Bad shit happens because incentives are misaligned, and the beauty of blockchain technology is we finally have this immutable place where we can store information and craft games that anyone can play and that can get us in society the outcomes that I think a lot of us really want to care about.
We only have like 1 minute, and so maybe I'll get everyone to say one sentence for why they are doing this blockchain stuff, and I will start with mine, which is I'm working on blockchains because I really believe that they can make the world a more equitable and lovely place. And so this kind of social impact issue I think is critical. Oops, I'm starting to talk more.
It's the most effective job in the world.
I adore the people. I get to hang out with all of you guys. I work with some of you, and it's super enjoyable hanging out with a lot of smart people solving interesting problems. It's like, I can't believe it's fun.
I think it's a very interesting new platform to experiment with new ways to collaborate and coordinate with each other, and we can just experiment way easier than we could have before and move much quicker in terms of structures that we create.
2008 happened in the US with the housing crisis, and that caused me to think about why is it this way? And along the way I learned that actually it wasn't this way before. It's kind of a recent phenomenon. We, the people, have always had the ability to create our own financial system. It was always there, for example, with gold or barter. But now it's a system that's more or less controlled and gate-kept by a collection of banks or what have you. And so I'm doing this to create an exit so that we can have alternatives.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. It's been lovely.